Welcome to this Pastel My Business online webinar. This webinar will show you how easy it is to carry over financial data from your previous financial system into My Business Online. We will cover recording the opening balances for your customers, suppliers, inventory, accounts, bank accounts, assets, and liabilities.
Today we are looking at starting a brand new company with opening balances. Now you may ask, why would we need to take on opening balances? Now quite briefly is you may find that you are moving from another accounting application, be it Pastel or any other accounting application, or you may just be migrating from a manual means of processing. So now you're starting to use the Pastel My Business Online, and you need to bring on all the balances for all your customers, your suppliers, your stock items, and all your accounts. So you need to bring in these accounts into the My Business Online application so that your financials are in order. So what you ultimately need then is, when you're taking on your opening balances, is you need some financial reports. Namely, you need an income statement report, you need a balance sheet report. But ideally, you'd like to have a trial balance. Now, a trial balance is just a list of both income statements and balance sheet items on one report, each debit equaling each credit. So it's a complete trial balance of a list of all your balances for all your accounts. Now, that's the ideal report that you would need to capture your opening balances for your accounts and so forth. But added on to these reports, you also need a detailed report for your customers, specifically your customers' age analysis. So it's a list of all your customers with their aging totals, be it in current, 30 days, 60 days, and so forth. So you need a breakdown or a list of all your customers with all the different aging totals per period. What you also need is a similar report, but for your suppliers, which would be your suppliers' age analysis. Now, the supplier age analysis would be a list, again, of all your suppliers' accounts, a list of all your suppliers' accounts detailing their balances per aging period as well. So it's your customers' age analysis, your suppliers' age analysis, and lastly, another detailed report that you would need is you would need your inventory valuation report. Now, your inventory valuation report is simply a list of all your inventory or your stock items with each item's average cost and the quantity on hand, so that we can bring in the stock items at different costs, and accumulatively it will bring you a total to your current assets or your stock inventory control account. Now, to take you through this process, we'll firstly look at customers, which is quite similar to suppliers, so we'll briefly go through the suppliers. But let's start off with your customers. Now, to take on an opening balance for your customers, you need to go to either edit a customer or create a brand new customer to take on the opening balance for that specific customer. And also bear in mind that for customers and suppliers, you can also import this information, and we will go through in a bit more detail at how to import these opening balances for your customers and your suppliers and so forth. But let's take, for the sake of today's session, let's look at creating a new customer or editing an existing customer to bring in their opening balance at the time that you migrated to our application. So on your menu, as you can see, I've got selected. You click on customers and you go to the customers option. When you click on the customers option, it will bring you to a window with a list of all your customers, all the customers that you have created in the application. If not, it will be blank, meaning that you need to create a brand new customer. And for the sake of today's session, I will click on add the customer. For the sake of today's session is, let's say we are adding a brand new customer with an opening balance. So I click on that add customer button. When I click on the add customer button, it brings me to yet another window where I need to import all the customer's details. Now, this would be the customer's address information, all the contact details and so forth for that specific customer. So you would need to then enter the details of the customer, the category, and most importantly, for today's session, since we are looking at opening balances, you need to stipulate an opening balance for that customer. Now, as I said earlier, is that you need an age analysis for all your customers. So you go through your age analysis for your customer, and you're creating customer A and what the opening balance is for customer A. And if you need to then take on different aging totals for the same customer for the different periods, then you need to make sure that the opening balance as at a specific date has been specified. For the sake of today's session, we look at doing one full opening balance for the specific customer, and the opening balance, let's say we're taking it on from the end of September. Let's say we started using the My Business application from the 1st of September, 1st of October, my apologies. So you need to make sure that when you're taking on the opening balance, you specify that the opening balance is of the 30th of September 2010. Enter the opening balance amount, what is currently outstanding for this customer, and all you then need to do is make sure that you save that screen. Either you save and exit to go out of the window, or you save a new to create a brand new customer. And you also need to ensure, which we have covered previously, is when creating a brand new customer, you make sure that the customer is active. So if you're looking on the top right of the customer's account, you've got an active button there. Now, once you've entered the opening balance and the date of this opening balance, as I said, you click on Save or Save and New to create yet another customer. Next, we go through our suppliers. So we go to a suppliers menu and go to suppliers option. Now, as I said, it's rather identical to customers, but I just want to show you the screen to make sure that you're familiar with that window as well. And for the sake of today's session, we will look at creating a brand new supplier. So I click on Add a Supplier button, and it brings me to yet another window which gives me details of the supplier. So I need to enter the supplier's name and details and so forth. And most importantly, we then need to enter the opening balance for the supplier. And as I said previously, is that we need your supplier's age analysis at this point just to ensure that you've got a list of all your suppliers and their opening balance as of a specific date. So on the supplier screen that you're on now, you enter the opening balance for the supplier, and the opening balance date would be the 30th of September or whatever month that you bring in the balance from. Make sure the supplier is active, and once you're done with entering that supplier's opening balance and the date, you click on Save to exit and Save a New to create a new supplier's account. That briefly takes care of opening balances for your customers and suppliers. Now we have a look at your assets, at your items, my mistake. Now we look at our items or inventory or your stock. So you click on the items menu, go to items or inventory tab, option rather, and it brings you to a window which will have a detail of all your inventory or your stock items. Now, for the sake of today's session, we are looking at creating a brand new item with an opening balance. So we click on the Add Item button. When we go to the Add Item button, it brings us to a window where it requires details for the item. Now, as I said previously, for items, we do need to have your inventory valuation report. As I said, to reiterate, it's just a list of all your stock items with their opening average cost for each item and the balance in terms of the quantity that you have on hand at the time that you moved over to our application. So on the screen that you're on now, you enter the description of the item, the category of the item, and most importantly is your item type. Now there's two item types. Either you have a physical item or a service item. Now if you're using service items, be it you're providing a service which doesn't have a stock item, notice that when I click on the service item, I lose two options on the right hand side, which would be our opening quantities, because you cannot quantify your service items in terms of quantity and the opening cost. And as for physical items, which is your stock valuation, you need to ensure that you've got the physical item type is selected. The opening cost. Now the cost is the average cost. What is the cost of this item? So you need to have a manually calculated process where you can calculate the average cost of your stock on hand, which will give you a value of what your stock is. Now if you don't have an average cost of that item, then you need to look at what is the total value of this specific item, the total value, divided by the quantity of stock of these items that you have. That will give you an average cost of that item. So you simply specify your opening cost on the field that is currently highlighted, and on the right hand side, ensure this item is active. Specify your tax if you are using tax, your selling prices for this item, and most importantly is your opening quantity. What is the stock on hand that you have for this specific item? Excuse me. Once you've specified the opening quantity for the item, you also need to then specify a date. And for the sake of today's session, we are looking at entering the date as of the 30th of September. So you specify that date as the opening quantity for this specific stock item. What Pastel will then do is it will take the opening quantity, multiply it by the opening cost, and that will give you a value of this item. And what Pastel will then do is look at the value of all your inventory items and together give you an accumulative value in your financial report. So in your assets and liability report, under your trade assets or your inventory control, it will show you the full amount or the value of your stock items. Quite similarly, it will be the same thing for your customers and your suppliers. It will be an accumulative balance for all your customers' opening balances, an accumulative balance for all your suppliers' opening balance, and it will enter it as one full figure under your trade creditors or trade debtors in your financial reports on the Pastel My Business Online. Now, once you've taken on the opening balance for your items, you click on Save to exit this window, or Save and New to create yet another inventory or stock item. And that briefly takes care of our items. Next thing we look at is we look at our banks. How do we take on balances for our banks? Because we need to make sure that our bank accounts that we have in Pastel reconciles to the bank the physical statement that we have from the bank. So most importantly, before you do your opening balances for your bank account, you need to firstly ensure that your bank recon was in balance at the time that you're taking on the balance. If not, reconcile your bank balance first and then do your take on balances for your bank account on the Pastel My Business Online. To take care of those opening balances, we click on the banking menu and we go to banks and credit card option. Now it will bring you to a window which will show you a list of all your bank accounts or your cash books. And it won't necessarily be your bank accounts, it can even be your petty cash, because your petty cash is a cash book or a bank account which needs to keep track of movements of cash in and out of your cash box or your petty cash box. So for your physical bank accounts with the banks, you need to ensure that you've got a statement from the bank that has been reconciled. And as for your petty cash, you need to ensure that you've counted the physical cash available in the petty cash box. So it's just a float. You just need to calculate that float and have that value. And for today's session, we look at adding a new account. So I click on the Add Account button, which will bring us to a window where we need to enter the cash book or the bank accounts details. You enter all your bank accounts details as required on the fields there. Make sure the bank account is active on the right hand side. And most importantly, we have an opening balance. Now you need to ensure, yet again, I'm going to emphasize this, that you need to ensure that your opening balance here has been reconciled. So it's currently in balance with the physical statement from your bank account. And also stipulate the date of the time, or the date rather, that your bank recon was balancing and was updated from your statement from the bank account. And once you've entered these two values, you click on the Save to exit or Save and New to then create another bank account. And as I said with the other accounts, with the customer, suppliers, items and so forth, what Pastel will then do, Pastel will do a consolidation of all your bank accounts and put in one trade balance for your bank account in your financial reports. And that briefly takes care of your banking. The next option, which is a bit more detailed compared to the other sections we've covered, is we look at our accounts. Now, I said to you at the beginning of the session that you need to have a trial balance to take on all your opening balances for all your accounts. So you need to create specific accounts with the correct financial category and take on the balance as of that specific date of your trial balance. Now, to take care of these accounts, we need to create an account. So you go to accounts and go to the accounts option. It brings you to a window that lists or details all your accounts that you have created with all the financial categories and so forth. And for the sake of today's session, we look at adding a new account. So we click on the Add Account button, and it brings us to a window that requires us to enter details of this account. Now we enter the details of this account, and on the right hand side, make sure the account is active. It has an opening balance based on your trial balance or income statements or balance sheet. Enter the opening balance for this specific account and also the date of when you are taking on this opening balance. Now, what's imperative with the account is that you need to allocate a financial category to each and every account. By doing so, by allocating the correct financial category, then Pastel My Business Online, when it's pulling through your financial reports, it knows whether to allocate this account into your income statement or profit and loss report, or should it allocate it to your balance sheet or assets and liabilities report. So it's imperative that when you create these accounts, you give it the correct financial categories. I would also further suggest that if you're unclear on which category to assign the account to, consult with either accounting auditor or drop us an email, and we are certain to make some recommendations, suggestions on which accounts you can use for that specific account. Now, just to show you a list of all the financial or categories that we have your cost of sales account, which would be an income statement account. So all opening balances with this financial category will then appear on your income statement report or your assets or your profit and loss report. You have your current assets, which would look at your stock items, your bank accounts, and so forth. You have your current liabilities, which would look at bank overdrafts and any other current liabilities which need to be payable within the next 2 to 5 years. But make sure you get clarity and confirmation from the accountant and auditor as to which account to use. I'm just giving you a brief rundown of each one of these. An expense, which means it will be part of your income statement. Your income tax, which is exactly that, the payments that you've made to SARS or monies that you've claimed from SARS. Non-current assets, which would be your fixed assets like your vehicles, your land and buildings, and so forth. Non-current liabilities, which would be your long-term liabilities over 20 years or so, which would be your liabilities on your mortgage and so forth. Other income, which is also part of your income statement. Owner's equity, which is part of your balance sheet, so your assets and liability. And your sales, which is directly part of your income statement. Now, you need to ensure that you've allocated the correct financial category for each one of the accounts so that Pastel can then allocate the correct balance in the right report, be it the profit and loss report or the assets and liabilities report. Once you've created all your accounts, you've entered the opening balances and a date for these opening balances, you click on Save to exit or Save a new to enter a new account. Now that briefly takes us through creating opening balances for your customers, suppliers, your stock items, your bank accounts, and also your general, call it your ledger accounts, but let's rather leave it as just accounts. It also takes care of just your account's opening balances in more detail. Now what I need to inform you on is that if you've taken on opening balances incorrectly for your customers and your suppliers, you can at any time come back and adjust these opening balances simply by going to customers and go to adjust opening balance. If you click on that adjust opening balance window, it will bring you to a small utility, a new screen rather, that will ask you to specify the customer that you want to adjust the balance for. Give us a detail as to why you're adjusting this opening balance, and give us the new opening balance and obviously a date. And once you've saved all these changes here, then Pastel will do the allocation in terms of the adjustments on your financial reports on the Pastel My Business Online. Quite similarly, it would be for your suppliers. So you just need to go to suppliers and adjust opening balances for your suppliers. Whereas your items, now your items you can only adjust the opening balance if you have not done any processing for those items, for those stock items. If you have not done any processing, whether you've sold or bought stock, then you can change the opening balance just by clicking on the editing window of that item. But if you have, then you can only do stock adjustments, where you click on the item and the item adjustment. And Pascal can then do the adjustment based on the adjustment that you need to make. But bear in mind that it will not be adjusting the opening balance. However, it will be adjusting the quantities or the average cost or the cost of that stock item as at a specific period. And for your bank accounts as well, your bank accounts, you can adjust the opening balances by simply going to adjust bank and credit card opening balances. And for your accounts, you can also do the adjust account opening balances. So the only item where you cannot adjust opening balances would be your items. Reason being is that items have got history with them in terms of buying and selling of that item. So you can only do a stock adjustment for those items. But for everything else, if you've entered the opening balance incorrectly, you're more than welcome to come into this menu and adjust these opening balances accordingly. And that briefly takes us through taking on the opening balances for all your customers, your suppliers, your items, your banking, and your accounts. Now we look at the convenient option of importing this information into Pascal. Now for your information, Pascal will import your customers and suppliers information only. Unfortunately, with the bank accounts and your actual general ledger accounts or your accounts, you will not be able to import these because they have additional information which is required by you. So they are rather finicky when it comes to creating these accounts. So it's not a simple import for these. You just need to create each and every single account, each and every single bank or cash book account. Now, to import your customers and your suppliers opening balance, you click on the company menu and go to the import data option. When you click on the import data option, Pascal asks you then which information would you like to import into the application. Now we have covered the import and export function on our previous sessions, so we're not going to be looking in detail as to the imports and exports of data, but I just want to show you how it imports the opening balances for your customers and also your suppliers. Now as you can see, you can import your customers and their categories, suppliers and their categories, items along with all their categories as well. Now just to give you an idea, this is what it looks like. I'm going to open up this Excel file. Now this Excel file that I've got open right now gives you a list of 4 customers that I don't have in Pascal at the moment. I've got customer test 1, 2, 3, and 4, their categories and their opening balance and a date for their opening balances. Now this is the format that Pascal needs to understand when you're importing your opening balances and your master file information for your customers. So what you can also do is create one customer in the application and export this customer onto Excel, a CSV format like I've got open here. Export that file, do all your changes on the CSV file. So you would add your additional customers information here with their opening balances and enter all their information on this Excel file. Click on the Save Disk. Click on the Save Disk. It will give you an option to click on Yes, and that information is saved. When you click on this option, we come back to our Import Data screen, which is the screen we currently have open. You click on Browse. You browse for the file. Now I'll save it onto my desktop. Customers.csv. Does the import file contain headings? Yes, it does. I map the import fields. If you have not mapped these fields according to the Pascal default, you need to do the mapping accordingly. If it has been mapped, just like I suggested, is to export, do your changes and then import. Once you're happy with all the mapping of the information, so Pascal knows where to find the opening balance information, you click on import, and as you can see, my mistake, it's imported 4 rows successfully. Now the reason why 1 row didn't import successfully on my side is because I didn't create an opening balance and an opening balance date for that opening balance for customer 5. Now, when we go to the customer's menu and go to customer's option, now it will take me to a list of my customers, and what you will then notice is, there we go, we've got your customer test 1, 2, 3, 4 along with their opening balances and that their accounts are active. Now, it's just there for your convenience. It's actually phenomenal how it works because it saves you. Rather than having to go through multiple windows to create each and every single customer with all their details, you can simply export one customer into Excel, do your changes, and then import back into the application, and voila, it's all done. All your customers are created, all your suppliers, all your items, along with their opening balances and so forth. Great, and that takes care of our session this afternoon. We have looked at customer, suppliers, items, bank accounts, and so forth. But we also have assets that we can look at, but the assets do not form a direct relation to our financial report. But you do need to bring in your assets just for your asset register information only. We will be looking at assets in a bit more detail at future sessions.
Thank you for joining us for this My Business Online webinar. If you found it useful, please visit the Pastel website to find out about future My Business Online webinars or training courses. Alternatively, contact us on sales@pastelmybusiness.co.za.